Okay, so today I want to talk about the last question that the man from the expat who's living in Burma sent. Okay, sorry, Myanmar. Okay, so his other question was, how do we engage with people whose values and actions we profoundly disagree with? Whether people with anti-Muslim prejudices here or Trump supporters in the US. Is it possible to interact with them if they will not or cannot listen? Okay, what we've come up with so far, this is their meditation group, is to send out metta, give to organizations which can help, model tolerant behavior in our own lives, and work on recognizing racism and prejudice in our own hearts, as the nuns from Singapore and Colombia talked about a few weeks ago. As the Venerable suggests, we could put pressure on the Burmese government to allow journalists access to the areas of the Rohingya state where the Rohingyas have been fleeing from. So all of those, I think, are excellent ideas. You know, I mean, the main thing is if we really want to make change, we have to come from a good motivation, a good space in ourselves. If we're angry, if we're agitated, if we want to lash out at somebody, our motivation is rotten, and so karmically speaking, going downhill. But also, we're not very effective when we're angry. And I think this is what people often don't realize, because so much in this country, anyway, protest takes the form of anger. And anger doesn't communicate very well because anger is angry. And we all know when somebody's angry at us, how do we respond? We don't say, oh, thank you, you're such a kind, wonderful person. Of course we want to cooperate. When somebody's angry at us, we go, nah, and we lash out. So, just to be effective in when we're trying to, advocate for change, we have to be respectful of the other people. We have to talk in the language that they understand, so talk according to what is important to them, to their values, to their concerns, and address these. And in the process of doing that, we can bring in our concerns and our values. But if we, it really works better if we start on a place of common values and common interest. And so instead of seeing a conflict situation as it's me versus them or us versus them with a table in between us and we're fighting the other side, they're fighting the other side, to see it as we're both sitting on the same side of the table looking at the problem together. Yeah, and when we can say that or create that kind of atmosphere, then it's not adversarial, and that helps people to open up and communicate better and be more trusting. Yeah, and so I think it's important to speak with compassion. But remember that compassion doesn't mean saying, yes, yes, we agree with you, whatever you say, of course, that's wonderful. Because, if somebody's doing something that's harmful or about to do something that's harmful, we need to speak up, but we have a motivation of compassion for doing so, not a motivation of anger. Yeah. And that's one thing just this last weekend in witnessing the NFL, what I was very touched about is there was, at least from what I could see in the pictures, there was not anger. Some of the people knelt, some of the people, locked arms, some of the people stayed in their dugouts, but nobody was yelling and screaming and making accusations and, this kind of thing. People just did their protest and everybody saw, and then they had the game. That was a more silent type of protest, but often on this thing, for example, with the Rohingyas, you need something more verbal, and you need to write to people and write to agencies. And we wrote a letter to the Myanmar government and so on, to the Myanmar embassy in DC. Yeah, so you need communication, because sometimes if you just do if you do a silent type of protest like that, a nonviolent protest, you have to explain beforehand what exactly you are protesting. Because in the thing with the football leagues, it wasn't totally clear. Some people were protesting racial discrimination. Other people, it seemed like they were protesting the president bossing them around and telling them how to run the NFL and NBA. Yeah. So you have to be clear exactly what it is you're protesting, so that the full force can be met and people can understand. Okay. And you often have to speak out against something repeatedly. Yeah. One time saying it doesn't always work, especially if you're dealing with a government or you're dealing with another group of people. You know, it has to come many times, each time respectful, but each time very firm, you know, and with an attitude that's willing to listen. Okay. So regarding the Rohingya situation in particular, and being able to listen, I wanted to read another email we received. This is from somebody who's Burmese, who grew up in Myanmar. He doesn't say, or she doesn't say where they're living right now. So they may be living not there, but somewhere else. But I wanted to read this to you. Okay. So I see that you have recently spoken about the Rohingya issue. I'm from Burma, and I'd like to add some perspective to this issue. First of all, I like your teachings very much. When you spoke out about it, it came to me as quite a shock, as I'm still in the evaluation process. We have two very different sources blaming each other. The international media pointing out the Rohingya exodus, and the local media pointing out terrorism. Okay? Though most people here deny the existence of Rohingya, there is enough evidence that they do exist. Yes, we see pictures of them, many pictures of them, 400,000 of them who have become refugees. You know, we know they exist. Okay, but there is some kind of terrorism going on. Insurgents who call themselves the ARS appeared and started attacking Buddhist, Muslim, and Hindu villages around that area, and many had fled to safety. So the ARSA, I forget what it stands for, but it is known, at least in Burma, as a terrorist organization. And what started the recent emigration of so many Rohingyas is that this organization attacked a police station, and then the military responded full force, going out and burning villages. Okay, of course, the Myanmar local media doesn't. They say there was the terrorist activity and the military just did something small, or you know, they describe it somewhere else. But the people who are fleeing are saying that the military set fire to their villages. Let's see what this one says. Apparently, it's becoming very dangerous. One of the local aid workers who went into that area was killed. I think reporters have been let in, but with many safety measures. Actually, reporters, haven't let in many reporters at all. The information that I'm seeing has come from somebody who's near the border, mostly in Bangladesh, receiving the people who are coming. Some reports came from inside Myanmar, but not so much. They don't seem to be many reporters, international reporters, let in. Local Muslim communities have condemned the attacks. And yeah, I can imagine that. So you have the local Muslims who want to be peaceful. You have a small group of people who are more terrorist, who set things off that then the military responds to, and then the local people are the victims of. One other thing I want to interject here is that with what's happening, there's quite a danger now that the terrorism will increase, because right now it's a local conflict between the government military on one side and the you have the ARSA on the other side doing that. Okay, but what international terrorist organizations, Taliban, Al Qaeda, and so forth, they like to take local conflicts, and they're likely to go in there and say, this is a Buddhist Muslim conflict, and the Muslims are getting trod on, and give them all that kind of terrorist, Islamic propaganda that makes it a religious conflict when it wasn't so much a religious conflict, it was more of an ethnic conflict. So this is a danger now, that these international terrorist organizations go in there and exploit the conflict for their own benefit and stir up more suffering for the local people, Okay, so local Muslim communities have condemned the attacks. Of course, the government probably doesn't hear that, they just see the attacks. I think they are not condemning Rohingya as a whole, but just the ARSA. So he's not, I think that they mean the government is not condemning the Rohingya. It's not clear what they mean. Yeah, what they refer to. But whatever the government is doing, the result is that the local people have to flee. This is just presenting the local side of things. Apart from that, the Buddhism here has many nationalistic elements, and it is one of the reasons why I've distanced myself from it. Yeah, and that's true because we have seen interviews of some local Burmese monks, not a lot, but a few, who have a Buddhist nationalist view on this whole thing, which and how they speak of the Muslims is very inflammatory and is really inflaming the situation quite a bit, I think. But I assure you, there are still many virtuous monks who would condemn any act of violence if they were exposed to the correct information. That's for sure. I don't have any doubt about that. And I don't think that, all the local monks are on the bandwagon with this. But the thing is here, people need the correct information. That's the thing. And not all locals are in approval of it either. Okay. So to conclude, it's very political and ethnic in nature, considering its timing with the Kofi Annan report and not a Muslim versus Buddhist issue. Yeah. So seen from a local person, it's not Muslim Buddhist, it's more ethnic. Yeah. And political. But some of the Buddhist nationalists are making it a religious issue by saying that the Muslims are raping their women, that the Muslims want to marry Buddhist women and convert them to Islam so that they have more Muslim babies and change the population, demographics and everything. So there's a lot of people saying a whole lot of different things, and it seems very difficult to find out who's saying what actually and what actually is true. So I don't have any personal grudge against Muslims or Rohingyas. And then they say thank you very much. So that's a more local view. Yeah. So difficult situation, isn't it? Yeah. When you have different news organizations presenting the events in different ways. And when you don't have access to all the different views on something. Okay, but like I said before, the way to respond is, with respect, with compassion. And it's clear that there's conflict. It's clear that there's refugees. We've seen pictures of that. So that's something I think that everybody can settle on, those facts, and then see, how can we remedy the situation.
The argument about the Muslim men marrying the Buddhist women and having Muslim children and converting everybody is very reminiscent of the argument that is being given here about immigrants who come here and have children and are trying to overthrow the white population. Very similar, despite it occurring in two different continents. I have read some studies, though, that show that women tend to have less children the more educated and the more financially secure that they are.
Yes.
So, if nothing else, it speaks about the benefits of providing women of any religion and ethnicity with education and opportunities to work and earn a living and become self-sufficient.
Yeah, and this is one of Nicholas Kristof's main points. He's really an activist in that regard, that if you educate women and change the position of women in society, you change the whole society. Yeah, and that's very, very true.
Cordial greetings, Venerable. Thank you for sharing this and a local perspective of these events. And it's sad to see the cycle of violence, one person gets killed in reprisals, military reprisals. And the third factor, which I'm interested to hear, is the foreign, Christian missionary groups that also, under the guise of proselytization, they provide to Christianize ethnic minorities arms and weapons, and using child soldiers in their fight against the Myanmar government. That's in foreign mercenaries too, who feel like a Christian extremist nationalists as well in this conflict.
Yeah, so you have a whole bunch of different people with different views and different needs fighting for different causes, and it really creates a mess, doesn't it? Okay, so from our side, we can certainly, make prayers and dedications. We may not be able to go there and physically do something, but we can speak about it like we are and encourage other people to speak about it and bring up human rights issues and so on. And then to make, dedication prayers in the evening for all these people on both sides of the conflict. And that's the important thing, to see that whenever there's a conflict, people on both sides are in pain and suffering. And so to wish both people on both sides that they have peaceful minds and peaceful hearts and good communication and so on.